Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. In 2019, the Modi government abrogated Article 370 of the Constitution and changed the status of Jammu and Kashmir from a state to a union territory, two separate union territories, in fact, one of Jammu and Kashmir and the other of Ladakh, to send shockwaves across the world and, of course, in Jammu and Kashmir. What has changed since then in these 4.5 years? How have the people adjusted to the new reality, and whether Jammu and Kashmir has benefited from the decision is something that has been debated threadbare across various sections. I myself did not have an opportunity to go and take a look at what is happening on the ground, mainly because the China crisis or the standoff between Indian and the Chinese armies in Ladakh took up most of my time. And 2 years in between 2020 and 2022 went in the after effects of COVID. So I was very happy to go back to the Kashmir Valley, especially to Srinagar and around, almost 5 years after the abrogation, and see for myself what is the current situation there. That's going to be the discussion on this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So why did I go to Srinagar and Kashmir Valley? One, of course, I wanted a small break after a long time with my wife. And two, I had not been there as a reporter, as an observer, ever since Article 370 of the Constitution, which gave special status to Jammu and Kashmir since independence, was abrogated by the Narendra Modi government on 5th August 2019. That decision was debated, criticized, supported, and of course, threadbare discussion took place on it for almost a couple of years. And that discussion finally ended when the Supreme Court gave a stamp of approval to that decision in December 2023. And of course, the status of J&K has changed. It has become the union territory. It is right now ruled by a governor. There is no popular government in place. Assembly elections haven't taken place after the change of the status of Jammu and Kashmir. And Jammu and Kashmir, of course, remains the frontline state on the Pakistan border. Ladakh, of course, has been separated. So the Chinese border comes into Ladakh now. But the line of control is fully into Jammu and Kashmir, from the Zozila to right down to Akhnur and Poonch and Rajouri. That area comes under Jammu and Kashmir. So while most of the years that I have been in journalism since 1983, our attention has been always about, at least my attention has always been about reporting on the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir, because of the terrorism, because of militancy, because of the uncertainty and violence that used to take place there, and the external factor, that is Pakistan, which continues to talk about Kashmir dispute, which in India's mind has ended by the abrogation of Article 370. But Pakistan continues to harp upon the Kashmir issue, the unresolved Kashmir issue. All that was in my mind when I landed in Srinagar, the capital of Jammu and Kashmir. And I wanted to find out for myself what exactly has changed. So the first impressions are always important. And more than me, it was my wife's impression which are important, because she went there 10 years later, or maybe 9 years later. In 2011, 2013 in fact, she had been with me to the valley. And after that, we had no occasion to go there. So the first impression that we gathered was the drawing down of the security forces' presence. The bunkers and the morchas and the barriers that used to be frequent when you got out of the airport and went into the city was visibly down. Not that there was no security forces presence, the presence is still there, but there is a conscious effort one felt of being little I would say, in the shadows, or conscious effort to merge or sort of stay away from the public gaze. That was the first impression. And of course, the roads were cleaner, the traffic was buzzing. We could see number of different models of cars. But the most visible change, at least from the journey from the airport to our place of stay, was the fact that there were so many coaching and training institutions which had put up their hoardings and their boards and for training to get into central government jobs or employment, or trying to become pilots and trying to become flight attendants. Those kind of training institutions like Akash and Byju's and NIT or Nifty, those of the things, a lot of these hoardings one could see. And school and colleges were full of students lurking around, gathering in groups, talking to each other. There were small cafes with different exotic names borrowed from the Western countries. There were specialized cafes dishing out, say, Belgian chocolates, and cafes like which have only tea and coffee, not just Cafe Coffee Day or Starbucks, of course, I didn't see, but something of that kind. Bakeries, number of bakeries visible on the streets of not just Srinagar, but elsewhere in the valley when we traveled to Uri, when we traveled to Pulwama, when we traveled to Avantipur. All those places we had the bakeries in your face. The markets were buzzing. There was a lot of business activity. But the most visible change was the traffic jams. Not that Srinagar didn't have traffic jams earlier. Most of those traffic jams in the previous decade or even 5 years earlier used to be because of checks and stoppages for convoys in the city and all that. Now, it was pure, like any other city, traffic jams in Srinagar. And of course, the old restaurants I wanted to go and visit, which I used to go and eat or stay during my reporting days, Adhu's and Broadway, and some of those downtown hotels in Srinagar, which were popular joints for media people, which was which were the only joints which were actually open even at the height of the tension or height of shutdown in Srinagar, were now buzzing with tourists. Tourists are in abundance in the valley. I was told, and I looked up the figures after coming back also, that there were 2 crore plus tourists who visited Jammu and Kashmir in 2023. We went to the mandatory Shikara ride, and the young Shikara fellow was obviously up to date. He was talking about what's happening in Mumbai Indians, the IPL team, when he learned that we are from Maharashtra. And he said, do you know 3 of our Kashmiri boys are playing in the IPL? One of them, of course, has fallen from big time promise. Apparently, that's what he was saying. But one more fellow has come up, and therefore they were all interested and glued to IPL matches, he said, in the evening. But we were, of course, on the Shikara in the daytime. And Dal Lake looked like about to get another traffic jam of Shikaras, because it was not just the Shikaras in which tourists were sitting and being taken around the Dal Lake, which was much more cleaner, of course, than before, but also the vendors, the coffee vendor, the kahwa vendor, the photographer who would insist that why don't you take pictures like what Shammi Kapoor and Sharmila Tagore did in Kashmir Ki Kali, or what Joy Mukherjee and others did in the 60s and the 70s. Those kind of pictures, why don't you take on the Shikaras? They keep coming alongside you when the Shikara is being taken around the lake. And then there are shops. So there's a 1.5 hour long ride on the Shikara, which they charge about 1,500 rupees, I think, per person, or 1,200 rupees per person. And they take you around the Shikara. And there are, of course, the houseboats, which are apparently full. I could see lots of luggage of tourists from outside parked in small Shikaras to be transported back to the to the bus stand or the taxi stand. So, in short, activity and buzz was at its peak. Tourists, of course, give livelihood to local people. Taxis run much more. In fact, the Shikarawallah was telling me that we do 5 trips a day sometimes at the peak of the tourist season, which is May, June, because of the summer holidays elsewhere in India. And of course, then there are other spots which are popular, Gulmarg being the most popular. When we went there, it was snowing. It snowed twice. And of course, everyone was trying to ski. Whoever came there, there's this famous Shiv Mandir where Rajesh Khanna and Mumtaz filmed their most famous song, perhaps Jai Jai Shiv Shankar. That is popular tourist spot in Gulmarg. Skiing and of course just playing around in the snow was one of the activities one observed with tourists from all over the place. I of course heard maximum language wise, if you hear people speaking, mostly I would put it about 60% of the tourists that we came across were Bengalis, and then the Maharashtrians and the Gujaratis. And of course in Gulmarg there's the Maharaja's Palace, which has now become a sort of tourist spot where you go and see how big that palace was, and you some money is charged there. So you go there and sort of look at how Maharaja Hari Singh lived and where he lived during those days. And there are of course the hotel rates are hugely sort of upped or hugely marked up by the hotels. One indication, we went there during the Good Friday week or weekend, and we actually had to stretch our holiday by a day because the airfare was prohibitively costly on our return leg. In fact, that day on Sunday, it was a Sunday I think, on 31st of March, the airfare from Srinagar to Delhi was touching nearly 20,000 one way in economy class. So you can imagine the number of bookings and number of people who travel bunching their holidays with the national holidays or whatever holidays, that gazetted holidays that are there. But that's only a kind of peripheral or a picture on the surface. While you speak to the locals, two things I observed, and now I'm coming to the more serious stuff. One is, of course, they all agree that there is a sense of freedom, there is a sense of kind of entitlement that yes, we are now in charge of our own lives. We can go about our business, of our livelihoods. Our children can study at a stretch without any break, without any band, without any hartal, and therefore they have better opportunities to do what they want to do. There is more empowerment of women. One could see many women in the street who, children, school children and college children going there and more freely sort of on the streets. There's no sense of fear, at least in the on the surface. G20 meetings in Srinagar have helped last year, is what everyone says. The hospitality industry is extremely happy and they would want this to continue. But when you speak to little senior people and people with little more understanding of the nuances of politics and governance and the businesses or the society, then you start getting the real picture. And the real picture is, while people are happy at what the life is all about, the ease of living in the valley, they are also concerned about the lack of public representation. One section at least said there are no MLAs to represent us. There is no assembly election that has happened. And of course, Supreme Court has now mandated that by September 2024, elections must take place in Jammu and Kashmir. So hopefully there will be MLAs going forward. One section I found, which is a little lower middle class kind of a section of the population, which said that we are happy if only panchayat elections are held. Right now only district development council elections were held in 2019 or 20, and they are happy with that. They do not want MLAs to come in because those people felt that the MLAs are going to then corner most of the or the majority of the funds that come into J&K for development and for people's welfare. So there is an opinion that is divided that whether you need state assembly or not, or whether you need public representatives at that level. They are happy with if the center or the state government orders panchayat elections where you have a better connect and a smaller, kind of group of people elect that panchayat member or the entire panchayat, and therefore they think that they have better, not control, but better access to these people, is what one section felt. The villages across the areas from where we traveled from Uri, we in fact went to the command post, which used to be the trading point or the point of access to Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Bus used to travel from Srinagar to Muzaffarabad from there, but that has stopped, of course, and the army guards it. We took the mandatory photo at the command post in Uri or beyond Uri. Some people do come there, but right now this complete trading is closed there. When it will start, nobody knows. But the projects of development have been numerous, and some of them have been implemented. Some of the welfare schemes, some of the development funds that have come have been utilized very well. So one educated and elite section of the society kept saying one thing which is to be noted, and that is that right now it's a bureaucratic Raj instead of the MLA's Raj. And they do not want this bureaucratic Raj to continue because they feel in the long run, the bureaucrats, the administration, the administrative officers, administrative machinery becomes arrogant and then unresponsive to people's needs and aspirations. So there is a conflict going on amongst the people whether we need an assembly to represent the people, or there should be just a panchayat and let the otherwise state government machinery run. So that I found very interesting. Security presence, of course, like I mentioned, is not in your face, but it is there. And if you speak to the security and intelligence officials, there is this warning that one must not lower the guard. Is the withdrawal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which gives the protection to the army to operate in a terrorism infested, insurgency prone area, must remain until full control and full normalcy returns, which they see not happening for the next 5 to 10 years. That is something that one must take note of, because there is also parallelly a lot of efforts to radicalize Kashmiri youth, make them sort of wait. And I heard this at least 3 or 4 times, that hamara time aayega. Right now we may be suppressed, we may be controlled, we may not be able to do much activity in terms of terrorism, in terms of support to terrorism, or in terms of separatism. But our time will come. You cannot have this kind of repression, arrests under the very stringent Public Security Act that Jammu and Kashmir has, is a refrain I heard from at least 3 or 4 people who obviously carry a lot of resentment against the decision by the centre in 2019 about abrogating Article 370. I did not meet any politicians or any political party worker, but that's the sense I got from people, talking to people, traveling around, taking pictures, and purely going there as a tourist. If I had gone there as a journalist and had probed deeper, perhaps I would get a little more details and little more visibility on what's the mood. But this is just a impression of a tourist who is at heart a journalist, and therefore can never stop asking questions to people you come across. And this is a very small sample that I am telling you. About 30 to 35 people I would have met at different places, in hotels, in restaurants, in shikaras, in the command setu or the command post, in Gulmarg, hoteliers, policemen, taxiwallahs, and some friends I know in Srinagar. This is the impression I gathered from them. So don't take it as the last word on the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. But while it's calm, my final sentence here is, while it's calm on the surface, everyone's happy with the normalcy, on a lack of violence, lack of killings. There is this sense of foreboding that there might be an incident which will trigger the slide back to the bad old days. God forbid, it may not, should not happen, but this feeling still persists. And just to give you some statistics, in fact, I picked up from the law enforcement agencies. If you look at the number of terrorists killed in 2019, it was about 211. In 2024, just 2 of them were killed. The local recruitment of terrorists or insurgents or militants is down to 20 in 2023, 20 number of people who have joined militancy, from 117 in 2019 and the peak of 143 in 2021. Security forces killed in 2019 was 84, or targeted by terrorists was 84. In 2023, it was down to 8. No stone pelting since 2022. At least in 2023, there was no stone pelting. And the IED blasts in 2023 were down to 1 from the peak of 11 in 2019. So, civil protests in 2019, of course, understandably after the abrogation of the Article 370 was 452. It's down to about 91. So, protests do happen, but the nature of the protests remains to be seen. Whether it's for civic amenities, for better facilities, for better employment opportunities, we'll have to see. But this is where it is. In sum, a snapshot of a small sample of my travel in the valley. So, something that I wanted to bring to you, and of course, you're free to form your own opinion by traveling there. But from what I saw, number of tourists is just increasing, and I hope there is some sense of proportion in that as we go along, because too many tourists also brings a lot of undesirable outcomes. Pricing, fleecing of tourists, and also of course the damage to the environment. But all that is in the future. At the moment, Srinagar and the areas around it in the valley, Kashmir valley, seem happy on the surface. That's the last word I have just now. Thank you for watching, and keep watching StratNewsGlobal, and of course simply Nitin every Saturday. And your feedback, always welcome. For the time being, it's goodbye.